And I wanted to share some thoughts on the 7 cards of the Seeker, the 7 tarot cards of the Seeker, and Alchemy. So, we all know that in the 7 cards of the Seeker, we start off with the Devil card. And when we are with this card, you can see that these two can take the brace, the loop that's bonding them to the devil, they can take this off. And this card corresponds to Capricorn. And it also corresponds to calcination. So we are all at the beginning of the spiritual path. We all start off burning with our desires in bondage to the material reality. And the truth is that we can take these off, the chains off at any time. We just have to do it. And the process of removing those chains is the path of the seeker, which the 7 cards show. So to start off with calcination, doesn't it make sense that the devil card would go along with calcination? And calcination is basically burning away of the material, burning the material down to its basic components. And that burning is that desire mind that everyone has, the desire to have things, the desire to believe that, you are your house, your car, you are your, things that you've accomplished in your life, your degree, it defines who you are, those sorts of things. Those desires and the desires to have things, to have titles next to your name, that all falls within desire mind. And one of the things that you lose on the path of the seeker is that desire mind. Eventually, you won't have that desire as much. That desire actually ebbs away. And it's a beautiful process. But all of us start off with calcination. We start off in the fire, in the devil card. We're stuck in material reality. We're stuck wanting to reincarnate because we want to beat the human game, as it's called. If you read like Journey of Souls or Bob Monroe, we are pretty much addicted. Oh, my husband's with the little ones. Sounds like the little one had a spill or something. But we all start off in bondage to that. We all start off stuck in samsara. We're in this endless repetition, this endless process of rebirth and death, coming back again and again to this world, to this life, and seeing what we are doing, um, to accomplish things, to cook new food. We come back in all these different forms, and that is the starting card, calcination, in alchemy, and the devil card in the 7 cards of the seeker. But again, just to basically release themselves, all they have to do is remove the chains, and they can remove the chains at any time. And that's the illusion. A lot of people look at this planet and think it's a prison planet. They don't see it as a school, an accelerated school for people who are creators. And we took the accelerated route. We took the fast track of schools in the universe by coming to Earth. It's the most difficult school, of course, but the people who are here are natural masters, or they wouldn't be called to Earth. They wouldn't be allowed to incarnate on Earth. And it's okay if they spend just a very short amount of time on Earth. It's okay if they spend just a excuse me, just spend their lives um, pursuing more life experiences, pursuing, that title, pursuing what they think will fulfill them. That's perfectly fine. That's part of the game, as it were. But more or less, we are here to the ultimate point of incarnation is to beat the game, to free ourselves, to show that we can free ourselves, and go on to be creator beings in other realms. So we start off with calcination, which in alchemy is the fire that burns off all of the dross, all the stuff that is not needed for the process. It is basically, it starts off Negredo, which is the black phase. We always start off in Negredo. All of the sources agree. And it's a purification. But we start off with the raw material, which is the Devil card. Then we continue on to the Tower card. And this would be dissolution. And how perfect is that? Is dissolution. Now notice here the male and female. Oops, I got to turn it the right way up. The male and female. So the female is the subconscious and the male is the conscious. So this is the sun and the moon. This is the lunar and the solar energies. And it runs throughout the entire course of the tarot. And one of the most interesting and unexplained phenomenons in the alchemical realms, you really won't find this in any book, is the alchemical marriage and an explanation of the alchemical marriage and what it really means. It's the union of silver and gold, they'll say. They'll say that it is the king, the solar king, and the lunar queen. They don't really talk about it that much. It's not really in any alchemical book when it comes to the stages or any of that. The alchemical wedding is something that you primarily can study it by looking into the chemical marriage by the Rosicrucians. It was a play that they did back in, I think, the 1800s. And it shows in the book version everything in a vial. So it shows the peacock phase in the vial. And it shows the king, the solar king in the vial, and the lunar queen in the vial, and the child in the vial. And you'll find the child in the tarot cards too. So in the Tower card, as I explained in my 7 cards of the Seeker video, in the Tower card we have the masculine and the feminine. And the masculine is the conscious self. This is the solar quality. This is the sun in alchemy. And the woman, the subconscious, is the moon in alchemy. This is the subconscious. And we have dissolution. So this corresponds to dissolution in alchemy. And it's the perfect card for dissolution because the Tower is basically the perception of our reality. It is basically how we perceive reality to be. We build all these things up. And of course, we have dark nights of the soul when they come tumbling down. And that's the dissolution that we experience on the spiritual path of the Seeker, is that tumbling down, that dissolution. And so the Tower card corresponds to dissolution in alchemy. And it has the 2 types of consciousness, the subconscious and the conscious, the lunar and the solar qualities of alchemy. And then we have the Star card. Now this is separation. And you can tell here how there is separation in the card. There's a separation between the 2 waters. There's one being poured on the earth and one poured in the water. And again, we have this duality, the 2 aspects. We know that a body of water is connected to the subconscious. So this urn would be the subconscious. And this here on the land would be the consciousness. So again, we have the lunar quality in the water, and we have the solar quality here. And this duality goes throughout the entire set of cards. Next, we have the moon card. And again, we have the solar and lunar qualities here. And we have the 2 towers. This is all about the subconscious and consciousness. And this goes with conjunction. So here we have them looking up at the sun and the moon conjuncted. So the solar and lunar qualities here are conjoined. And so this is the conjunction phase. This is the alchemical marriage here. And it shows the moon and the sun together as one. And then, of course, wouldn't we be surprised that it's in the fermentation stage that we encounter the sun? And this would be the alchemical child. This is the product of the alchemical marriage, is the sun. And you see the alchemical child here on a horse with the sun in the background. So this is the solar quality. This represents a new consciousness, a younger, more youthful, innocent consciousness. And the sun is a card of, oh, I have a little one trying to come in here. The sun is a card where basically your energy, your consciousness is reborn. The sun gives us so much. It gives us light. It is, the solar quality is gold in alchemy. and it basically represents the intellect. And the intellect is the soul. It is the part of you that says, I am, and the part that's separate. And so the Sun card with this new consciousness here is saying it's a new intellect, a new reborn consciousness. And so we can say that the divine child happens in the fermentation stage of alchemy. So that is the stage where the alchemical child is born. Now, in the chemical, excuse me, in the chemical wedding and the Rosicrucians, part of the phase is that the guests of the king and queen kill them. They're dismembered. That is a part of alchemy. And that is the distillation phase, which goes along with judgment. Excuse me, I'm getting over a cold. And judgment is basically distillation. And this is where the chemical, the consciousness is reborn. You see both the subconscious, which is the feminine, and the masculine, which is the consciousness, being born with a new consciousness, the Christ consciousness here. Now, I know some people would be, oh my gosh, that's the Christ consciousness in a tarot card. And yes, that's the Christ consciousness. That is what Christ consciousness is. It's that new state of being, that new consciousness. And so in the judgment card, it is the child, the alchemical child from the Sun card is the Christ consciousness. This is unity consciousness. This is oneness consciousness. And so here we have all three aspects of consciousness: the subconscious, the lunar qualities, which is silver, the alchemical child, which is the philosopher's stone, and we have the solar consciousness, which is the divine masculine. And they're being reborn together. So this represents a brand new state of consciousness. And this is in distillation, which is where those three elements are distilled down. The substance is distilled into a stronger form. And so with the alchemical child being born during distillation, or during fermentation, distillation is where the new consciousness really takes over. And of course, then we have the world key. And the world key is ultimate liberation. This is when you're outside of samsara. This is where you're dancing with life. You have ultimate freedom. And so the 7 cards of the Seeker and the 7 stages of alchemy represent going from being bound into samsara into the ultimate form of liberation. And so I wanted to share that with you, that we do have something that explains where in the process, the 7 stages of alchemy, the alchemical marriage happens. Now, it may seem a little strange when it happens, that it would be basically in conjunction, but it makes sense that it's in conjunction, and that it would be the moon card. And again, you see the sun and the moon conjoined here in the tarot card. And that the alchemical child would be born during fermentation, because what else would you describe as the production of a child other than fermentation? Fermentation is a perfect word to describe it, because basically the genes are multiplying and growing, just as the yeast grows in the wine in fermentation and alchemy. It is growing. So that is when the divine child is born. And so these are things that you don't really learn in the alchemical books. But if you have the tarot and you have the keys and you know the 7 tarot card keys of the Seeker, then you can really discern where the alchemical child is born and where the alchemical marriage is. Again, conjunction makes sense because it's conjunction, but it's not something that's written in plain English in any book. It is something that you have to intuit. And knowing the 7 cards of the Seeker and following that process, you can really determine exactly where the alchemical child is born, where the alchemical wedding happens, and then where basically all three are killed and brought back to life. Distillation would be that phase where it is both death and rebirth. It shows them in the coffins rising up because they are reborn during distillation, the different parts, the different components. And what alchemy really is at its heart is that it's the combination of the subconscious and conscious coming together, and it's being reborn. But before those two aspects come together, they have to basically, well, after they come together, after you realize, you basically go into shadow work and you integrate your subconscious into your consciousness. And then what happens is that you end up with this new consciousness. And then that consciousness, you think that's where you're going to stop. You think that's the end, that you've reached enlightenment then. But then it goes on, and then you have the complete breakdown, another dark night of the soul, and you have again a new consciousness come in. And again, that is the Judgment card. So you have a couple dark nights of the soul along the path of the seeker. You start off bound to samsara, bound to this world, bound to physical material reality, stuck in this reality, stuck in pursuing goals, thinking that all there is physical material reality. Then you have the dark night of the soul, the awakening, where you realize there's more to life, there's more to reality than what you've been taught. And so the Tower card comes along and transforms you. And then again, you have another dark night of the soul at the Judgment card, at distillation, at the 6th stage. And that's because the consciousness that you thought was super consciousness, the consciousness you thought was the ultimate form of your reality, falls apart again at distillation. So we know there's more than one dark night of the soul along the path of the seeker. So that is pretty much what I wanted to share, was this connection between the tarot and how to figure out where the alchemical child is born and the alchemical wedding takes place. Because again, this is not something that you will find in the alchemy books. This is something that you will only find when you start studying the bigger consciousness system. And the tarot is perfect for finding out exactly where along this line of alchemy that these two parts happen. Again, the alchemical wedding actually takes place at conjunction, which is the... Hang on a second, I have my cards confused here. This is conjunction, is the moon card. And again, you have the sun and the moon here. And that shows that this is the conjunction stage. So this is in conjunction, the actual conjunction stage of alchemy is when the alchemical marriage happens. And it is all in the tarot cards of the seeker. And the divine child, the philosopher's stone, is born at the stage of fermentation. But even after our philosopher's stone is formed, it's not finalized. In fact, they say, and it's just in the book of, what is the name of it? Everybody talks about it. In one of the books, the one that I quote quite often, the one that I thought was really funny, the book of Aquarius. The book of Aquarius explains how there's a white and a red stone. And so at the stage of fermentation, when the divine child is born, this would be the white stone. But it's not until we go through the dark night of the soul, represented by Judgment, where the divine child is reborn, along with the divine queen, which is the silver lunar qualities, and the divine masculine, which is the solar gold qualities. It's not until these are reborn at Judgment, which is during distillation, that we have this new consciousness. So we have to go through one more dark night of the soul, even though we think that we've gained super consciousness. We think we've reached the top level, but there is one more dark night of the soul. And again, the end game is the world card, which is ultimately freedom, liberation, freedom from samsara. My apologies. I have a bit of a cough recently. And so, there's a helicopter going over. So that is basically what I wanted to share with you. Oh, there's 2 of you on now. I think let me go over it one more time for you guys. I'm going to also hit publish. And if you have any questions and you want to write anything, feel free to ask anything in the chat, to make a comment. I appreciate that you guys are here. So basically, what I was explaining. Hello, Matt. Nice to see you. What I was explaining is that in the tarot cards of the Seeker, you can determine when the divine child is born during the alchemical process. That the alchemical process corresponds to the 7 cards of the Seeker. Calcination starts with the Devil card. Dissolution is the Tower card. And you'll notice throughout the entire process, there's always 2 beings. The divine masculine solar element and the divine feminine lunar element. Excuse me. This is your consciousness and subconscious. The Star card is separation. And you can see the separation. The 2 vessels would be the divine masculine and divine feminine. The divine feminine being poured into the ocean. And the divine masculine being poured onto the land. Thank you, Matt. I made this myself. And so the conjunction card is the moon. So this is the divine wedding. This is where the 2, the solar and the lunar, come together. And you can see it in the solar and lunar motif up here. Excuse me again. Something's tickling my throat. And solar and lunar are up here in the tarot card. So you can see the conjunction happening in the tarot. And that is obviously the alchemical marriage. That's the marriage of the sun and the moon, the silver and the gold coming together. And then the divine child, the sun, is born at the stage of fermentation. So that is when the divine child is actually born in alchemy. Pardon me. Keep coughing. So the divine child is born in alchemy is the sun. And that's, you won't find that in any of the alchemy books. It's only implied in the tarot. And that happens at the stage of fermentation. I don't have Snapchat. I do have Instagram if you want. You can find me on Instagram. It's under Bridget Corns. You can find me pretty much under my known name under all my social media. But I'm mostly on YouTube and Instagram. And what I was saying is there's 2 dark nights of the soul on the path of the Seeker in alchemy. The first path, dark side night of the soul, is during dissolution, during the Tower. And the second dark night of the soul is during judgment, which is during distillation. That is when the divine child, the king and the queen, are all reborn. That's your renewed consciousness. I apologize for the coughing. Probably should have grabbed a lozenge. But the sun card is when the divine child is born, fermentation. So we think at this point, when we gain the sun, we think that we have gained consciousness, that we have gained this new level of understanding. And then all that falls apart during distillation, during the judgment card, because this is where we're torn apart and reborn. In the chemical wedding, in the Rosicrucians play, it has the king, the divine queen, which is silver, and the divine king, which is gold. They're dismembered by the guests at the wedding. And that is depicted in the judgment card. They're resurrected as a new consciousness. So I've explained it a couple times on this video. Thank you everyone for joining me. If you have any more questions, let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to sign off here. See, there's 2 of you on here. But go ahead and check me out on Instagram or message me on here. Either place will work. And I'll try to do more lives. I know this isn't something I normally do, but I'd like to do more of them. So I hope you enjoyed this information. I was really excited to find out where the divine child was born and the alchemical process. I was really surprised it was fermentation. And I was pleasantly surprised. I'd always assumed that the divine marriage happened during conjunction. But I love that the tarot actually confirms that by having the sun and moon conjoined in the tarot. And that just shows you how deep the tarot really is and how much they really did know. And of course, Paul Foster Case was an alchemist and he designed his own cards. This is the A.E. Waite deck. So if you look at Paul Foster Case's cards, it's a lot more in depth and there's a lot more information there. And that is something that I will be going more into when I cover each of those tarot cards in my tarot card series. I'll go into each of these and I'll include the fact that this is the conjunction card and what that means. And it's really interesting that it would be under the moon because the moon corresponds to silver in alchemy and it corresponds, of course, to the subconscious. So that would mean basically if we take this tarot key as a source of information, that would mean that basically the alchemical marriage happens within our subconscious. And that probably, to me, based on my research, based on my own experience, what that would mean is that basically shadow work is the divine marriage. It is bringing the subconscious into your conscious reality, recognizing your subconscious habits, your subconscious routines, the things that you were programmed to do when you were younger, things that you don't even think about. It's bringing that into your consciousness that creates the alchemical marriage, where the subconscious and the consciousness are reunited instead of being separate. Because a lot of people don't ever delve into their subconscious. They don't examine their subconscious to find what they've repressed, what's hiding there. And so it is a really fascinating key card, and I can't wait to explore this more in depth in a video for the tarot card keys. So I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you for joining me. It's good to see people on here. And thank you all for subscribing. Thank you for reaching 1,500. I really can't believe that my YouTube has taken off like it has. Tomorrow, the oracle readings will be on here as usual. I have to upload them now. I've already recorded them. And thank you so much for joining me. Bye for now.